all the while championing the women's revolution because like BTW guys, I don't know if you're aware, but Stephanie McMahon invented women's wrestling in the last couple of years, and they're going through a real good period, or at least that seems to be what the story was to come out of their women's evolution pay-per-view, which took place on Sunday night, which they had the fucking gall to do. Midway through the goddamn thing to do a rundown of the card where women can't be on it because of the fucking backwards country that they're going to in terms of Saudi Arabia. And I like it's ridiculous to me that they would have no fucking sense to not realize, like, oh, you know what? Maybe we can just wait until Monday Night Raw. Maybe we can just wait 24 fucking hours to give more airtime to this fucking show that has already taken up all of the goddamn build. There was no build basically whatsoever, with the exception of the two women's matches, the two women's title matches, I should say, and the I guess like the NXT World Women's Title match and the Mae Young Classics Challenge match. So like there was no build, and like I mean that's just the end of a fucking tournament. You know what I mean? It's not like it's a personal storyline. It's just the end of a tournament. The other three rather, those were all like actual stories surrounding the titles, and they had stakes and blah 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 blah. But like the rest of the show was just slapped together, thrown together with no real fucking mind for what's actually like what's actually going on. They were building up to this first ever women's only pay-per-view, and it was entirely as a means for them to justify the fact that they're going over to Saudi Arabia again, that they've got this blood money from Saudi Arabia in order to put on these shows, to basically say to the world, look at how great the Saudi royal family is. So they put on this women's only pay-per-view and give it no actual airtime to build up to the show, instead dedicating all their available airtime to building up the show where the women can't wrestle on. It's just it's painful to watch. It's so annoying to see, and like it's just you try to justify liking a product like the WWE, and they just make it so fucking hard sometimes. You justify, because like I mean there's been some shit throughout the years that has just been like kind of gross, and like maybe in terms of the context of the time you can justify it that way, but like looking back on some of the stuff that they did in the 90s, some of the stuff that they've done in the 2000s, some of the stuff that they've done recently, some of it's just really really hard to justify, and you try to justify it, and sometimes you're capable of justifying it, but other times you just run into a brick wall like fucking Crown Jewel. Anyhow, for more information on this, I highly recommend you seek out the last couple of weeks of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He does a very good job of properly taking down the WWE over the decision to go over there and do this. And again, like I kind of understand, I kind of sympathize, because like these contracts, they must be difficult to get out of, and it must be like financially draining. But like again, there should be no dollar value that says that this is going to be worth it. Or at the very least, like there's got to be some way that they can say, you know what, like we'll do this event, but like it's obvious to us that we can't go forward with them, or it's obvious to us that we can't go forward with promoting them in the way that we have been, or like, oh, this is the great one. I believe I talked about John Layfield, formerly Bradshaw in the WWE, last week, talking about how the WWE is going to be an agent for change. Ronda Rousey saying relatively similar things, because apparently Ronda Rousey, whenever she's not talking about the actual act of fighting or wrestling, just spews absolute nonsense all the time. Getting off track here. this whole concept of like, oh, WWE going over there can be an agent for change. It can basically, we're gonna open up to them culturally, and they'll have to take in some of the WWE's culture that way. If you want to be an agent for change, maybe go over there and say, yeah, we'll do your show, but we're gonna do the WWE show. That includes our women, because sometimes they are some of the most important parts of the show. You may have noticed that we just ran a very successful pay-per-view with all of them. A pay-per-view that was successful despite our best efforts, BTW. So if we can't run the show that we want to run, no fucking deal. That's how you be an agency for change when it comes to this sort of stuff. You fucking go in there and you say you're going to change, because if you want us, you get us, not some watered down version of us. That's just that is just wishful thinking on my part. I completely admit that. Anyhow, needless to say, I won't be watching the show. I will pick up. I'll pick up information from context clues about who won and lost. That's actually going to segue us perfectly. I'm going to play the little segue jingle here. I'm not going to do a full musical sting. So just here's the segue jingle. As much as I've been a professional wrestling fan for most of my life, I don't typically catch the weekly shows live anymore. It's mostly like a combination of things. It used to be a sort of a weekly event that I got together with a couple of buddies. We watched Monday Night Raw and sometimes SmackDown together. Used to be like just sort of how I would connect with people on the internet. It used to be a nice way of doing things. The big thing is like I used to not have to get up every day at 6 a.m. Like Monday Night Raw runs 3 hours, runs into midnight here in Nova Scotia. SmackDown runs quite late as well. I'm oftentimes working during the show. During both shows, I'm oftentimes working. So like it's honestly like it's just a situation where it hasn't been worth it. And honestly, I don't think that the TV shows are necessarily made with me in mind anymore. They're not necessarily made with anyone in particular in mind, I don't think. I think they're mostly made in mind for social, actually, weirdly enough. Like I think they're made to sort of cut down into like YouTube clips and things along those lines. Of course, WWE would probably argue otherwise, but it's not really important. It's not here what I'm here to talk about. So I'm sitting there last week, just hanging out. I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing on this particular Monday night. I think I was working on some homework actually, and I get a text from a friend of mine saying, "Yo, are you watching Raw?" I said, "No, I don't typically watch the shows live. What's up?" And I'm expecting like, oh, somebody from our past like showed up again. Of course, they're building to this stupid show in Jeddah, or in Riyadh rather. So like, of course, there's going to be another legend coming back from our childhood, and yeah, maybe it might be interesting to see what he or she has to say. Well, he in this case has to say. So I'm just like, what's up? And my friend then proceeds to tell me Roman Reigns has leukemia. This was like a bit of a rocker for me. It rocked me a bit. Roman Reigns, if you don't know, is basically his generation's Hulk Hogan. He's his generation's John Cena. He's the sort of the main focal point of the show. The problem is like with Roman Reigns, it's always been the way that he's been presented. It's the booking, if you will. He's always been sort of presented as this cool guy, but like never loses. But he's also simultaneously the underdog, and like the thing with him is that like he's very skews the audience in very significant ways. You've got sort of the younger target demographic of the WWE who's super into him because he's this larger than life superhero, and then some older fans, people around my age, are a bit cynical around him. I'll be honest with me, like Roman Reigns, I can recognize he's a very talented professional wrestler. I think that when he's on his best day, he's one of the most intriguing intriguing stars that the company has ever produced. I think he has a real presence. I think he has a real natural charisma. He's a good-looking guy. Like there's no denying that. But some of the storytelling did leave something to be desired for me, and it was just a matter of like, okay, like this is a good match, but ultimately it's going to break down to Roman Reigns winning despite all of the odds. And it just, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but it wasn't engaging for me. It was, boring or whatever you want to say. But to hear that that Joe Anoa'i, the man behind Roman Reigns, has leukemia was heartbreaking to hear. He's a relatively young man. I mean, he's 33 years old. He has 3 young children. And apparently this is the second time that he has had leukemia. He had leukemia when he was a younger man, about 8 years ago, I think he said. And he announced this past Monday that, well, not this past Monday, the Monday before that, I suppose, that unfortunately it has returned. Excuse me, it was 11 years. It was in remission and it was back. This is heartbreaking in a lot of ways. Like I said, you can dislike the writing around the Roman Reigns character all you want, but a young father, sort of at the prime of his life, the prime of his career, having to step back and take on cancer, it's a real kick in the teeth. It seems like from everything that you read about him, everything you hear about him, his actions outside of the ring, he's a very genuine, caring man. He seems to be a good father, a good husband, a locker room leader, if everything is to be understood. And of course, if you're not a wrestling fan, I would highly recommend that you seek out some of the even if you're not a fan, I should say, you should seek out some of the tributes and some of the writings that some of the wrestlers have written. In particular, Aleister Black's on Facebook is really, really good. Highly recommend that you check it out. Like I said on Facebook myself, it's heartbreaking because Roman Reigns or Joe Anoa'i seems to be the most genuine, caring, kind father and husband and professional that you could ever hope to meet. His cancer diagnosis is heartbreaking, but I'm sure his return to the ring will be absolutely spine-tingling, and I cannot wait for it. Okay. On the other side of this break, since it's been, episode of heavy topics today, apparently, I'm just going to talk about a bunch of stuff that's making me happy. Because, quite frankly, I can. It's the 1-year anniversary of my show. I'm going to do what I want. On the other side of this... All right. So it's basically the John's Positivity Corner for the last few minutes of this show, just because I do want to shout out a couple of pieces of culture that I've recently become aware of, and have sort of fallen head over heels for, and I'm going to start first of all with one of my new favorite television shows that's currently in production. And honestly, based on who produces this show, who created it, and who stars in it, it's a surprise to me that it took me this long to get on board. But it is a situation where it's a television show that requests of you a couple of episodes to sort of get itself into the groove. And I suppose I gave Netflix shows that sort of leeway, and I should give the same to shows that are produced through the more traditional channels. Of course, I was watching this on Netflix, but that's besides the point. Anyhow, the show that I'm talking about is The Good Place, which is just a good, solid television show. It's produced by the same folks that brought you Parks and Rec. Stars Kristen Bell alongside Ted Danson, which is like that sort of classic thing that they do, in particular on NBC, bringing in